Bonjour les étudiantes et bienvenue à la classe de la semaine 24. So it's time to go ahead and get started with what's going on this week. Before you do, you want to see her. She is, I think, awake. I can't tell for sure. So if I sound kind of quiet in this one, it's because I'm trying not to disturb her. But there's Gemma, chilling out, just hanging out, watching the world. As you can see, there's a quilt out over there. Monty and I have been working on tummy time with her, but needless to say, Monty thinks it's very strange, and Gemma just kind of tucks her legs up in and like stares at me like, what are we doing? Why did you put me on the floor? Why am I on my stomach? It's really funny. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, let's review les articles partitifs, which we discussed last week. Now remember, these express quantity and are used like some and any. They also work a lot like le, la, les, or en, une, des, things like that. But they tell people how much, or that there's a quantity of something. So, par exemple, je bois du café. I drink some coffee. Remember, with coffee, you could have a coffee, which means a cup of coffee, and you can do the same with tea, but in general, it's du café or du thé. Now remember, these come in 4 different flavors. We have du, which is masculine, de la, which is for feminine things, de le, which is if there's a vowel or a silent H, which is the vast majority of the H's en français, and de for plural. Now remember, these always are going to agree with the number and gender of the noun. So, du pain, some bread, des fruits, there's multiple fruits, so it's des, if you will remember. You can also take a look at last week's video, and it has a deeper explanation into all of this. Now remember that we use les articles partitifs when something is measurable but not countable. So things like viande, which is meat, chocolat, latte, milk, sucre, because you don't want to count every single grain of or crystal of sugar, glace, eau, which is water, beurre, which is butter. Yes, you can have a stick of butter, but I mean, it doesn't always come in sticks. Pain, which is bread. Yes, you can have a loaf of bread, but the French eat a lot of bread, so I'm just saying. Temps and argent. So they're always going to use it en français because it's very much like using un, une, des, or le, la, les. You always are going to include it or one of those in a sentence, because otherwise these poor nouns are left out on their own and it just doesn't work. Now remember, when something is either countable or considered a whole, we use l'article indéfini. So, par exemple, après le dîner, je prends un thé. After dinner, I have a cup of tea. I can count 1 cup of tea, just like I was mentioning earlier with the café, which is coffee, and du thé. You can say un thé. Notice though that you could say deux thé as well. Or je mange un sandwich chaque dimanche. I eat a sandwich every day, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but not ones that look like this. I'm just saying. That's a lot of stuff, and those look like big onions, and I'm not into that life. Anyways, so those are all things that are countable, considered a whole. If you ate un poulet, it means like you ate a whole chicken, okay? So, and yes, I know that there are people out there who do, so it is a possibility. Another thing, you can use les articles définis when you're using things like aimer, préférer, adorer, and détester. So things that express opinion about the food. Par exemple, j'adore le thé. I love tea. Just tea in general, en général. Or j'aime mieux le fromage. I love cheese, which is a true story. You can ask Madame Bush. She can totally vouch for that. She can also vouch for the onion thing. So anyways, those are used when you're talking about opinion. Indéfini is when you're talking about something that's countable or considered a whole. And partitif is whenever you have something that is partial, not measurable. It's difficult to work with. So that's basically how that all works. Now remember, if you say something like je mange le pain, people in France are going to think you're ridiculous and they're going to laugh at you, or they're going to be like, you are nuts, because that literally means you're going to eat all the bread in the whole wide world, okay? So no, it's not really a big deal in English, but yes, it's a huge deal in French. So just don't do it, okay? Now, if you remember from last week, there are a couple of situations when we use de or de with the apostrophe. Instead of making it du, de la, de. And that is in negative sentences. So as you can see, je ne bois pas de lait. I don't drink any milk. Or je ne prends pas d'eau. I don't need any water. I don't take any water. Or nous avons plus de thé. We don't have any more tea. Things like that. You just use de. Now, if you're using a sentence that has a quantity expression, then some of these, bless you, Gemma, some of these don't have, or just use de as well. So, par exemple, from the very beginning, combien de? Combien de? How much? So, par exemple, combien de chocolat qu'est-ce qu'elle commande? So, like from last week where the lady was ordering chocolate and it was beaucoup de chocolat. Yeah, it's the same example. So, a couple of other phrases. Un peu de, elle commande un peu de chocolat, a little bit. Elle a assez de chocolat, have enough chocolate. Elle commande un verre de chocolat chaud. Un verre de is a cup of. On commande beaucoup de chocolat, a lot of chocolate. And then, I don't know if this is possible, but elle commande trop de chocolat. She asks for too much chocolate. So these all, as most importantly, have the word de in them. Notice it doesn't change based off of the fact that chocolat is masculine, so it really should be de instead of de. So yeah. All right, so last week we also learned two verbs that are a little bit irregular. It was prendre, to take, which specifically means like a meal, and boire, to drink. So I want you to take a moment to practice conjugating them and see how well you remember from what you learned. And here's our other irregular verb that we learned, préférer. Now remember, this is to prefer something over something else. And of course, there are some other verbs that are very similar and they conjugate similarly as far as how they work. So I want you to take a moment to practice this, and remember the most important thing are the accents. So remembering which way your accents go. So take a moment, practice it, and make sure that you remember which way your accents are supposed to go. So today's major topic is l'heure, which is the hour en français, telling time basically. So whenever you want to know the time, here's your magical question. Quelle heure est-il? Now, quelle heure est-il is one of the few phrases en français that most of Canada understands and will respond to, obviously in English, but he knows exactly what I mean when I say this, so super handy phrase to know. Anyways, le français use both a 12-hour and a 24-hour clock, and you'll notice that en France they use it for two different things. The 12-hour clock is a bit more casual, so if you're talking to your friends, you'd be like, oh yeah, let's meet at 1 o'clock, and they'll know what you're talking about. They use 24-hour clock, or the 24-hour clock, for official announcements, appointments, and other situations to avoid ambiguity. So, for example, you could say that you want to have a meeting at 8 o'clock. It's not necessarily unrealistic for it to be 8 o'clock a.m. or p.m. depending on what the situation is. So, that's why they use the 24-hour in situations like that. Now, one other thing that you're going to notice in a moment is that the Français are very likely to use quarter till and other terms like that, whereas here in America, it's like, what time are we meeting? Oh, 9:15, or 10:45, things like that, as opposed to quarter to 11. But in France, they use it beaucoup. So if you go here in vis-a-vis, you can see some examples, but in a moment, I'm going to show you some more. All right, so let's talk about how they actually tell time. Now, the first thing to know is that they're always going to use the phrase il est. They don't use say or anything like that. Il est is what they say. That essentially means it's in English. So like it's 3 o'clock. Il est 3 heures is what they would say. So coming back over here, if it's this, 1 o'clock, they would say il est 1 heure. It's 1 hour. And that's how they do it. 2 hours, 3 hours, things like that, instead of 3 o'clock. So il est 12 heures. Notice that we're going to add an S because it's more than 1 heure. And then, of course, we get into interesting stuff like il est 11 heures. And then if you want to say am 30, it's 11:30, you would say il est 11 heures et demi. Demi means and a half, essentially. So that's what they use for 30. Now you're going to notice that they have an E here. That E is because is féminin. So anytime you have you're going to put the E in demi. Now let's go ahead and talk about some other ones. So we have noon is a specific word. So il est midi. Il est midi. And then of course, the interesting thing about this is 12:30. You're going to notice that midi, when we have demi and 30, it doesn't have the E, and that's because midi is masculine. So they would say il est midi et demi. They wouldn't say il est 12 heures et demi. They use midi and minuit. Minuit being midnight. So, like in this example, il est presque minuit. It's almost midnight. Now, like I said, midi et minuit sont masculins, so no E here. E est féminin, so there is an E ici. Now, when using excuse me, a 12-hour clock, we always say AM or PM, right? Well, en français, they don't really have the terms AM or PM. No, it makes it more interesting than that. So what they use is du matin in the morning, de l'après-midi in the afternoon, or du soir at night. Yeah, so it keeps it very interesting. So, par exemple, it is 1 o'clock in the morning is il est 1 heure du matin. It's 1 hour of morning. I know, great, right? Then if it's 2 in the afternoon, il est 12 heures de l'après-midi. And then, of course, if it's 11:30 at night, il est 11 heures et demi du soir. So those are the phrases they use instead of AM or PM, which makes things a little bit more of a mouthful. I'm just saying. Now, important phrase to know, how to ask when something is. So the first thing you need is à quelle heure? At what hour? That is the phrase that they would always start with. So par exemple, à quelle heure commence le film? What time does the movie start? So in this case, it would be at 12:30. So at 2:30, 2 hours and half. See how that works? It's pretty cool. All right, now when they're telling time going past demi and on the hour, things get a little bit interesting. So we're going to learn what they do with the 24-hour and the 12-hour clock. Now in class, when we talk about time, I want you to practice using the 12-hour clock. Why? Because the 24-hour clock is easy. The 12-hour clock takes a little bit of practice. So the first thing that you're going to notice is that they don't write their time like we do. They don't do 9:15. Instead, they have 9H for then a space, then the number of minutes, which in this case is 15. So, and they also say it very differently than we do. So, par exemple, in the 24-hour class, or when you're using 24 hours, they would use 9h15, 9 hours 15, kind of like how we do. When you're using the 12-hour, though, they would say 9h15, so 9 hours and a quarter du matin, which is in the morning. So that way they can specify if it's morning or afternoon, or evening in this case. So it's quarter after 9 if you do it in English. All right, so next time we have 15h30, so 3:30 en anglais. How they would say it with the 12-hour clock is 3h30 l'après-midi, most likely. So 3 hours and a half in the afternoon. Now this is where things start to get a little bit tricky when you start getting past 30. And you might be wondering why. Well, here's the gig. Anything, that was a horrible line, I'm sorry about that. Anything on this side, I'm drawing with my left hand, just so you know, because Gemma wants to be held with my right hand at the moment and will not settle for the other side. So yeah, I'm sorry. My drawings are going to be bad for the moment. Anyways, anything on this side is the hour, the current hour, plus minutes. So if it's the 9 o'clock hour or the 6 o'clock hour, like in our next example, it's going to be 6 plus whatever. So 6. Hey, Gemma, you're okay. Hang on a second. Sorry about that. Okay, so anything on the right side of the clock is going to be the hour, current hour, plus the number of minutes that are going on. So if in this example it wasn't 6:45, it was 6:15, it would be 6h et quart, 6 hours and 15. However, anything on the left side, so anything after 30, is the next hour minus the minutes. And you'll notice that on the clock over here that has what it is. So since we have 6:45 en anglais, in military time, or in the 24-hour clock, they would say it military time style. So it's 18h45. And in the 12-hour version, they don't say 6 in it at all. Instead, they say 7h moins le quart. So 7 minus a quarter. And they'd specify du soir. And you'll notice that they do that all throughout the whole thing. So if it's, 6:40, it would be il est 7h moins 20, minus 20. And it's the same with this next example. So we have 20, which is 8 at night, 8:50. In the 24-hour clock, they would say 20h50, sorry, 20h50. In the 12-hour clock, they would say il est 9h moins 10. So it's 9 hours minus 10. Now, just so you know, that does mean that over here, if you're saying like it's, I don't know, 1:05 in the morning, you would say il est 1h5. It is 1 hour 5. So that's a perfectly normal thing to say. Same here. If it was 1:20, it would be il est 1h et 20. So 1 hour and 20. But like I said, you come over here and all of a sudden the 1 o'clock hour becomes 2 minus whatever it is that's coming up. So that's how that works. So yeah, it's a little bit tricky. It can take a little bit of time to practice, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually not too bad. Okay, one last thing that I want to show you guys before we go, l'impératif. These are commands. So you know how in English, you might tell somebody, stop. That's an imperative statement. So in Francais, they would use l'impératif. That's how it works. Now, usually these are directed at tu, which is you, nous, which is us, or vous, you. So, par exemple, we have stop talking. Arrête de parler. Stop talking. Just be quiet. Or let's go to the restaurant. Allons au restaurant. Or have a wonderful day. Passez une bonne journée. Or listen, écoutez, which is something that I think I've shouted at you guys before. Not literally shouted, but I told you guys before. These all are imperatives. Now, one thing that you're going to notice about them is that they don't have a subject in the sentence. So it's not tu arrêtes de parler. You stop talking. It's just like in English where you drop off the subject and you just have the verb. It's pretty fun stuff. Now, one of the important things is that when you have le verbe en er, wow, that was bad. You can still tell I'm using my left hand, can't you? Anyways, everything is the same except for Mr. Tu doesn't walk with his dog S. You'll notice it with arrête ici. So regarde, watch. Tu regarde, you watch. There's no S. Interesting stuff, huh? However, if you have er or that should be désolé, other way around. And most verbs, they're conjugated the same. So attendre, wait. Now this is a thing that they say en français a lot, especially to their children. I'm learning about because I'm actually reading a parenting book about French parenting. It's very interesting. I'll tell you all about it sometime. Anyways, they would use the phrase attends, wait. So attends, that's the tu version. Attendons, we wait. Or attendez, you wait to a group of people, or maybe it's somebody that you don't know, but it's like for some reason you're telling them that they need to wait. Or something you may tell children as well, finish already. So we have fini or finissons, finissez. Or if you're using faire, which is to make or to do something, so like do the dishes, you would use fait, faisons, or fait. Notice that they're all the same, that they would be when you normally conjugate them. And then you'll notice that there's an ellipses. That's because usually you have them do something. You don't just say do. It's really awkward. Last one, for an example, is va. All right, sorry about the awkward pause. Jenna spat up all over me and her. So anyways, let's see if I can pick up right where I was. So last one, aller. You would say va, go, or allons, go, or aller, go. All of them mean go. You'll notice that you need to take the S off of this one. But yeah, anyways, that's how they work. Now, two that don't conjugate normally, because you knew that was going to happen. I mean, it's français, are of course two of our four normal regulars. So we have avoir and être. So this is how they look, and as you'll notice, there's an ellipses again, and that's because most of the time there's a word that follows it. So people don't just say have or be. They actually say, you know, have something, be something. So, par exemple, sois gentil, Michel. Be nice, Michael. Or, bless you, ayez la patience. I'm sorry. Ayez la patience. So, that's how they would say that. So, we have ayons, ayez. Yes, that is hard to say. I'm not going to lie. And then, of course, we have sois, soyons, soyez. Now, interesting thing, going back to the parenting book that I'm reading, in France, they don't say be good to their children. They say sois, so this one, sois sage, which is basically be like conscientious and respectful. Sage kind of means like smart, use your wisdom, things like that. So it's like, it means, you know, be respectful of other people, use all the things I've taught you to behave yourself. So I thought it was an interesting phrase they use. Sois sage. All right, now with the l'imperatif. Sometimes you do have negative situations, like, for example, let's not drink too much coffee because you know what happens. You won't sleep. So, what you'll notice is the ne still comes before the verb and the pas still comes after that. So, par exemple, with let's not drink too much coffee, you're like starting to get crazy here. It would be ne buvons pas trop de café. Don't drink too much coffee, please. Or don't wait for dessert. Enjoy your macaroon now. S'il vous plaît. They would say, n'attendez pas les desserts. Don't wait for dessert. So that's how that works. Now, obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about l'apéritif as we go along, but this is like the quick crash course into how it works. So it's a lot of fun to play with, so have fun using it to tell your dog, attends, wait, or arrête, stop, or telling your siblings, sois sage, be nice, be gentle, be good, all those good things. So anyways, there you go. If you have any questions or anything during the week, let me know, and I will see you guys in just a few weeks. Au revoir!